Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin. As the number in the title suggests, this is a direct sequel to the first game. As someone who has never actually played the first game, I was super excited to get into another Monster Hunter while I wait for Monster Hunter Rise on PC. This game was developed by Capcom and Marvelous, and it's already out on the PC and Nintendo Switch. I'm glad to see that more Monster Hunter games are coming to the PC, because the love and attention to detail in the series deserves a spotlight today. So without further ado, this is the Bearded Breakdown, and this is the Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin review. I must say, coming from Monster Hunter World and Iceborne to Monster Hunter Stories 2 was quite the shift graphically speaking, with the latter being an anime cel-shaded design. I quite like the change in pace actually, it brings a new sense of vibrancy to the series. The vibrancy doesn't just extend to the look of Monster Hunter though, the characters are much more friendly and relaxed in their designs, whether it be overly large eyes, anime expressions, and assets being flaunted. They're all staples of this game. Now, the interesting thing is that this game was clearly made for the Nintendo Switch. This is evident from the character design, to even simple things like grass and foliage popping in as you walk around. It's clearly not utilizing the strength of the PC platform. It's a minor gripe, I know, and it would have been nice to have a more graphically developed version for the PC. However, as a fan of anime, I am very fond of this style of graphics. It was just a pleasant surprise to see anime-style attacks as I battled series favourites, and seeing as this game is a turn-based RPG, I had more time to appreciate monster designs. They stayed faithful to the series, which is fantastic. I'm no longer frantically running for my life when Teostra sets up a supernova, or when Nergigante decides to dive bomb me. That extra time to appreciate the work put into the monster models goes a long way with a long-time fan of the series. Despite the cel-shaded look, all the attacks and abilities felt weighty both in look and feel, lending impact to these massive battles I fought in with these super special attacks. Each element, whether it be fire, ice, lightning, or some other element, lit up the screen perfectly, especially when it came to stuff like ultimate attacks and quick time events. Those were some of my favorite parts of any battle, and there is definitely no shortage of spectacle when it came to that. Capcom wasn't holding anything back when it came to those visual animations. Each monster has intricate details that are brought front and center, whether it be a savage fireball from Rathalos or a Kulu Yaku using a boulder as a shield. Each had its own identity and feel, and it would have been easy to be lazy with these visuals, and I'm happy to say there wasn't any laziness in this department. It's easy to see why Monster Hunter Stories has such a devout following. The love, the attention to detail, and the character design is evident and consistent. I really have to emphasize the consistency of the thematic elements. Throughout all of the Monster Hunter games, the designs have largely stayed the same. And when the magic happens though is in the subtle iterations to the details in the worlds and the monsters. That's a fine line to walk. How do you improve the visual appeal while staying true to the artist's original vision and be current? Going back to the point I made earlier though about having the time to appreciate the finer nuances of monsters and worlds, having that extra breathing room to appreciate all that effort has elevated this game to a new height. Stories is a shift to a turn-based battle system as opposed to a traditional real-time battle system. With the removal of movement, battles are much more streamlined, allowing players to focus on fantastic visual animations and the rock, paper, scissors mechanics. Let's delve into this a little bit more. I don't know if you've ever played Suikoden on the PlayStation, but those games had an excellent duel system which allowed for cinematic battles which lead to interesting climactic story moments. I feel like the Monster Hunter Stories games borrow from Suikoden in that sense. Most moves, whether they be attacks or special attacks, work in this rock, paper, scissors fashion. What I really like though is how you have to figure out what attack is coming next by watching animations of the enemies. Sometimes subtle shifts of a tail or a bobbing head can indicate when an attack pattern is about to shift. If you use the right attack animation, the game then shifts into a head-to-head clip where your character comes out on top, and if a fellow teammate is targeting the exact same enemy with the same attack advantage type, a double attack animation happens which feels epic in itself, especially when you are teamed up with your favorite monster from the series. You also get a buddy who you can combine attacks with, and sometimes unleashing ultimate attacks. And these are grandiose in vision, scope and size. The combat system has proven to be complex and layered at times, really requiring for you to think ahead and plan your next few moves, and I absolutely love that. It's so nice to see how far JRPGs have come. We are truly spoiled for choice, whether it be Persona, older Final Fantasies or even the newest Yakuza. We are going to continue seeing iterations on this genre and I'm absolutely loving it. Some Monster Hunter fans will notice that a few of the weapon types are missing. In this game, you get to pick between a sword and shield, a greatsword, a hammer, a hunting horn, a gun lance, and a bow, each with their own unique attacks and animations to follow suit. I really love that I could change between certain swords and shields, and they would have their own unique special attacks according to the element that comes with the weapon. This goes doubly for charged special attacks that require you to fulfill certain conditions in battle, like winning 3 head-to-head battles with enemies, or charging your bow and sacrificing a turn. You'll then follow up with a full power shot and an elemental shot with a higher chance to inflict elements. It's this confluence of managing attack types and using weapons and monsters to the best of their abilities that make each battle enjoyable. Not to mention that monsters' special attacks are often phenomenal to look at and make each battle a treat to watch. I do miss weapons like the insect glaive, the dual swords, the charge blade and even the lance. And as a lance main myself, I was a little shocked to not see it in the game when it's such an iconic weapon in the Monster Hunter franchise. Other than that though, the weapon system is executed to an incredibly high standard. So believe it or not, the attack system isn't the bulk of this game. The actual bulk comes from the Monster Hunter gene system. In this system there are tons of monsters. You are essentially playing Pokemon at this point. Each one you collect has a variety of special attacks and an ultimate attack. To power these attacks, you use kinship, which essentially acts like your MP pool for both you and your monster. Over time, your monster will grow, unlocking these attacks in the gene system. Each monster has 9 slots in its gene pool, and these allow you to learn new tactics, boost existing stats, elements, and even give you buffs. You can mix and match these genes later in the game, giving monsters attacks that wouldn't naturally be in their own gene pool. Although I don't know if I'd suggest it because each monster has their own elemental strength and weakness. I personally found that my monsters would be far more effective in stacking the same element gene. For instance, my Anjanath, aptly named T-Bone, has tons of fire elemental genes, making him a destructive force in both melee and fire, steamrolling enemies just like in the lore. The system is very intuitive and it makes collecting monsters even more exciting as you raise them exactly how you see fit. It's a deeply gratifying system, giving you an abundance of freedom and agency in how you tell your own story going through this game. Finally, let's talk about the quest structure. Here's how it works. Talk to NPC, get a small cutscene, go to location, find the monster, fight the monster, repeat this about 4 times, fight the big baddie of the area. That's essentially it. If it wasn't for the excellent battle system, character and monster animations, all of this would have been a drag. The game is a semi-open world using mostly linear maps in certain story areas and procedurally generated monster dens. The problem is that there is a lot of overlap and a lot of repetition in the levels where story monsters are, and the same can be said for monsters dens. Too often, I felt that I had been here before and I'd memorized the map layout the second time around. On one hand, it made gathering and making money very easy as I always knew where the chests were and where the resources were. On the other hand, I felt myself beelining straight for eggs in monsters dens or beelining straight for the boss fights in the story missions. This was all because I had seen it all before and the loot from the chests are usually not that impactful. Here is my advice on that matter. If there is a blue chest or a red chest, seek it out. If it's brown, don't bother as much. Speaking of seeking out, there are dozens upon dozens of side quests. Some are even repeatable, which serve as a good leveling tool. Some of these side quests will give you recipes or powerful items that will help you in battle. And the good news is you can see these rewards before you even take the quest, so you know if it's worth your time. Honestly, this game has so much content, from side quests to a special post-game dungeon, and then there's another dungeon straight after that, challenging objectives to do outside in the open world, and some of these will make you question your ability as a hunter. One particular boss handed my ass to me like 4 times. It was embarrassing. There's even multiplayer missions and expeditions which will give you the opportunity to fight super rare monsters and get their eggs. You can even battle other players if that's your thing. Once you get to post-game, there is literally a whole new world for you to explore in the form of side content. I was very impressed at 80 hours in. I had done the main quest, I had done one of the post-game dungeons, and I was just farming elder eggs. There is so much content here, I could easily play for another 100 hours. And for the price of the game, there is so much to chew through. As far as Monster Hunter storylines go, this one's fairly straightforward. There are monsters going crazy for one reason or another, and you are tasked with investigating the reason, just like the protagonist in the previous game. You visit several beautifully varied and well-crafted areas in an attempt to find out the truth. There is a bad guy, there's a bad cult, and you have to whack them with your big sword and Pokemon. I mean monsters. You have to whack them with your monsters. And for a Monster Hunter game, it's upbeat and cheery, and there's practically a motivational speech at every turn. I think that has something to do with the fact that this game is probably geared towards attracting a younger audience, which by no means is a bad thing. There's also a cat who makes puns about everything, and as a fellow pun master myself, I even rolled my eyes a little bit. The story does take an interesting turn towards the end, which creates this climactic ending to the arc. And there's even a bit of horizontal story in post-game dungeons using elder dragons to push the narrative. Your predecessor leaves notes of information around these monster dens which will help you battle these epic elder dragons. And not only that, you'll find many NPCs which give you small snippets of story. And with 120 monsters in the world, each of which will give you a little bit more context as you go through. And you'll need it because the story can be a little lackluster at times. Saying that though, I want to say that the cutscenes are amazing, and it truly gave me this epic vibe and grandiose moments, feeling of exhilaration as I rooted for our hero and his dragon pal. Some of these cutscenes were so great, they truly reach out to you in an attempt to strum the emotional chords in your chest. And for me, they succeeded. 4 words. Play this on PC. You'll be hurting your experience otherwise. This is a Switch game ported to PC, and as I mentioned earlier, you can tell this by the world design. So on a PC, this game will run like a dream. My only 2 gripes for this are as follows. 1. Full screen alt-tabbing will cause the game to window, which grates my soul to the core. And 2. Sometimes the sound of multi-hit moves can be jarring. They switch between right and left channels rapidly, which can be very disorientating if you're playing with headphones. But other than that, it runs like a dream, and despite having lower resolution textures for things like foliage and floor, it's a beautiful game that ran flawlessly for me. You may have a different experience obviously, but from what I can tell, many of the reviews from this game say that the game runs incredibly well on PC, which was the platform I played on obviously, and it's also the one I recommend you to play on. As with all Monster Hunter games, the soundtrack is incredibly well crafted. From the title screen to the audacious battle cutscenes, the soundtrack as is of excellent quality. But funnily enough, there is no music present in some of these monster dens and shortly after leaving the village. I found that strange for a JRPG. But thinking back to other Monster Hunter games, there really isn't much background music unless you're actively engaging a monster or you're doing some kind of camp activity. The music is thematically appropriate and hypes you up at the right moments as you mash the interact button to beat out enemies' quicktime events. This in combination with the excellent pacing of combat can mean that you're totally engaged in this game that you're playing right in front of you. I never felt that I lost hours playing this game. The excellent and phenomenal soundtrack just served to reinforce the notion of how important music design is in the visual medium that is video games. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the review. Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin was a great surprise. As someone who plays the mainline Monster Hunter games, coming to this game, I was pleasantly surprised in a number of ways. The character designs, the monster designs, and even the world design itself was phenomenal in most parts. I'd say you definitely get your money's worth. Like I said before in the review, I'm about 80 hours into this, and I can easily see it extending to another 100 hours with all the post-game content. This is a green light for me. This is so easy. It was such a pleasure to play this. I enjoyed every minute and I found myself willfully investing my time into raising these monsters, and it's such a nice feeling to get a different perspective on the Monster Hunter series. Guys, it was my pleasure to bring this review to you. Seriously, I appreciate all the support. Now I'm at 800 subs, almost at 1,000, and it's all thanks to you guys, so thanks so much for that. Guys, I know you were expecting the Legend of Mana review, but unfortunately the port has some technical issues which made the review difficult for me, so I decided to do the Monster Hunter Stories review. I hope you liked it anyway. This has been the Bearded Breakdown. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you on the next review. Bye.